Chapter 135. Goldu Coinsu. 3 Coins 3. Lucis Subjugation Battle. The largest scale scenario that marks the grand finale of Act 3, it involves stopping the Archmage Lucy Mayril, who single-handedly bashes through the apostles of the Telos Order and aims to uproot their foundation. Taylor's group, having no idea about the darkness of the Telos Order, could only perceive Lucis' actions of smashing the apostles as sheer madness without explanation. Yet, the one who spurred Lucy was Clarisse, the saintess of disbelief who fell into despair after losing Adele. When Lucy was informed of the darkness entrenched within the Telos Order, she didn't hesitate to strike them down. As Adele's divine power waned, Lucy began to vaguely recall memories from the endlessly rewinding time. It wouldn't have taken her long to realize that everything Clarisse had said was true. Sylvania Academy is a legacy and treasure left by Gluck. Moreover, Lucy had promised Gluck to protect the school if it ever faced an insurmountable crisis. To fulfill that promise, she set out without hesitation to thrash the apostles of the Order. The act of outsiders, who were unaware of Lucy's circumstances, attempting to block her path, that constitutes the final battle of this chapter. After defeating Lucy, Tylee belatedly realizes the darkness of the Telos Order and proceeds to take down Archbishop Verju and the remaining apostles. During this process, the new sword technique attainable from the relic possessed by Clarisse becomes the Godslayer sword Qian Sha Jian. Single quote. A technique also used to kill Act 4 boss, the evil deity Mebular. As detailed as this explanation is, there's a problem now. The premises of this entire scenario have collapsed. Saintess Clarisse did not fall into corruption. In the end, she chose to trust the Holy King Eldane once more and observe his actions. Verju has already been expelled and taken away to the Holy City. No longer can he lead a life as a cleric. Thus, the subjugation of Lucy has lost all reason to occur. Quote quote. I was on the roof of a cabin, reinforcing a chimney. I struck the base of the handle of a small hand axe into the groove of a support. The wooden components were fitting together cleanly. It doesn't seem like something we should just leave alone. Muttering to myself, I went through my thoughts in order. The subjugation of Lucy received significant attention even in Sylvania's failed sword sage. Setting aside the weight and scale of the scenario, the skill proficiencies and levels, along with the various unique skills earned from it, would undoubtedly assist greatly during Act 4. Above all, a significant delay in Taylor's growth is a significant cause for concern. While one cannot cling to a distorted history forever, Taylor's growth still serves as a sort of insurance. Even in a skewed history, one ought to have at least the means to address a crisis. Is the subjugation of Lucy truly going to be a non-event? Lucy's remaining sense of debt in her heart. The last promise she shared with Gluck is resolved, leaving her only 3 days ahead to live as she wishes. I wanted to meet Lucy in person to confirm such things, as eager as a chimney, but for several days now, Lucy had not appeared at the camp. The girl who usually clung like background scenery, always napping, had recently stopped visiting the camp. What could be the reason? In any case, she must be sleeping at the Ophelius Hall, so I was thinking of asking Mr. Bell to call her next time we meet. Is that you, Mr. Ed? A voice called out to me from below the cabin. I was up on the cabin roof, reinforcing the chimney and roof. I slid down the periphery and looked below to find a man and a woman I'd never met before. Sitting on the edge of the roof, I looked down at the two. Ah, you were up there. Quote, the man had a sly look. Skinny, always smiling but seemingly cunning. He wore a brown beret and held a large wooden box in his hands. The woman had a rather plain appearance. Long black hair hung neatly straight down. She had a neat look without any remarkable jewelry or accessories. Hello, Mr. Ed. My name is Duran, and this is Leane. Quote, oh, hello. Nice to meet you. Quote, I jumped down from the roof, barely landing on the dirt. As I steadied myself and dusted off my clothes, Duran introduced himself with a grin. I act under the orders of the Deputy Lord of Lortel. My official title is business manager of the Elt Company's Sylvania branch, but, well, it's just a fancy title. Quote, Lortel sent you. Yes, that's correct. And this is Leane, the secretary. Although she's the deputy lord's direct secretary, since he mostly handles things himself, she mainly serves tea or cleans. Quote, you don't have to introduce me like I'm just a tea girl, Duran. Quote, it's just a joke just a joke, we're laughing. Quote, absolutely not funny. Neither Leane nor I laughed. Only Duran continued to chuckle, lifting the wooden box he was holding to explain. The deputy lord plans to build a villa here, so we just stopped by to do some basic surveying. For the report. Quote, that's, seriously, if he says he'll do it, he will. As you know, Mr. Ed, he's especially keen on matters related to you, so we have to move quickly, right? We're his employees, after all. Quote, though he didn't seem so old, I spoke casually to him, but he seemed not to mind. Effortless charm seemed inherent in him. Perhaps a characteristic sociability of merchants. Quite a sticky way of dealing. Meeting Mr. Ed is truly an honor. Well, technically, we could meet anytime, but given that we're wary of the deputy lord's eye, it's more awkward to keep adding, Mr. Ed. We seem to be peers, is it necessary to use such a formal title? I've come to handle money at this age, all thanks to being under watch. Quote, Duran casually threw various surveying tools at Leane, who frantically caught them. Anyway, since my employer holds Mr. Ed in high regard, it can't hurt to make a good impression. It might seem materialistic to say this out loud. Quote ellipsis quote, I caught a glimpse of Lortel's cold-blooded nature at Laplace Bakery. But that incident aside, I wasn't unaware of his usual behavior. He's so cold and calculative usually, but softens like a florist in front of Mr. Ed, not exactly a proud sight for the employees of the company. It's a laugh for me. Quote, Duran held the end of a long tape measure, stepping across the field to take measurements across the perimeter. As he moved further away, Duran's voice rose. Did you hear anything interesting during your rare visit to the camp yesterday? Nothing special. Just checking on each other, also something about Elt Company plotting something. There were talks of buying school supplies in advance. Quote, as expected, you're well informed about the company's internal affairs. Being close to the head has its perks. Quote, Duran chuckled and added in a good-natured tone. Anyway, if there's anything tough to ask the deputy lord directly about the company, or something you want to discuss, feel free to look for me, Duran. It seems more convenient for me too, if I can earn some points with Mr. Ed. Quote, well, there might not be anything worth asking you for over Lortel, who actually makes the final decisions. Quote, there's no need to be so tight about it. Life is unpredictable, after all. Brought a present too, just to make a good impression. Quote, Duran turned his head. There, by the campfire, a neatly wrapped gift bundle was visible. Leaving Duran to his surveying, I unwrapped the package to find a rather luxurious-looking bottle of liquor inside. It's Clentru distillate from the Drex Count's territory. Produced only 500 bottles a year, you would have to part with at least 1 gold coin in the Oldic black market to obtain it. It's a new drink introduced using distillation methods from the eastern continent, rather potent, so those not accustomed to spirits should take care. Quote, ellipsis quote, if you're not immune to alcohol, 1 sip could knock you out. Leane took one and was out cold the entire afternoon, had to take leave. Quote, don't so casually disclose others' embarrassing moments, Duran. It was you who offered it. Ignoring Leane's protest from afar, Duran laughed heartily. Even aficionados drink it sparingly. Quote, you're overestimating me. Quote, what, overestimating? Duran, who was holding onto the tape measure, gave a small smile, and with one hand flipping through documents, he said. Perhaps it's you, the teacher, who's underestimating himself. Quote, after sending Duran off, checking on Yenika's condition, I headed to the living quarters. Yenica has greatly improved and seems likely to manage her daily life alone soon. Watching her sit alone in the cabin, calling forth various lesser spirits, it seems it won't be much longer. I decided to head to the general store to stock up on books and school supplies in advance, as per Lortel's advice. Located in the main square of the living quarters, Clavin's general store is as famous as Laplace Bakery, and possesses the largest commercial structure in the neighborhood, spanning up to 5 floors. In the living quarters, there are only 3 buildings over 5 stories tall. The Mex's Bridge Entry Control Office, Elt Company's Sylvania branch, and Clavin's general store. Its significance within the living quarters is evident. Naturally, its logistics rely entirely on Elt Company, hence it cannot escape the influence of the company. Books could be bought in bulk at a bookstore further inside, but for now, I pondered purchasing daily necessities at the general store. It might be called a general store, but it handles everything from simple groceries to large pieces of furniture. Such a store would be commonplace in a commercial city like Oldic, but even this size is almost like a department store on remote Akan Island. The location is so prime that it's always crowded with students, faculty, and residents of the living quarters. But once inside, it feels quite spacious despite the busy entrance. I made my way through the crowd and entered the store. It couldn't exactly be called tidy. The building was quite old, showing tattered areas here and there, and the wooden shelves where goods were displayed showed signs of age as well. But maintaining this standard in a remote place like Akan Island is already a cause for gratitude. I gathered items like rope, crystal balls for magic engineering classes, simple inks, and parchment for runic drawing. With enough skill to handcraft most things, my haul mainly constituted school supplies and consumables. As I wandered through various sections of the store pondering, it happened. Quote ellipsis ellipsis quote, quote ellipsis ellipsis quote. Standing oddly in front of a display of simple ingredients, a girl was covering her face with a book. What are you doing? Quote ellipsis ellipsis quote. Was she pretending not to recognize me here? It seemed like a tactful move. Anyone could tell she was covering her face to avoid recognition. I felt a stroke of resentment towards myself for not realizing it sooner, but it was too late, I had already acknowledged her. Anise. Oh, Ed. How nice to see you. Looks like you're here to buy something, huh? Anise suddenly pulled back her head and hugged her shoulder in a defensive posture. She was holding a simple paper bag in one hand. But why the defensive posture all of a sudden? I had no intention of doing anything, yet I felt unjustly antagonized, which left me with a peculiar feeling. I'm here to buy things myself, didn't expect to bump into you here. You haven't been coming to the lab recently, have you been busy? I've heard about Yenica, too. They say she's been quite ill. I was admittedly shocked when she suddenly decided to go camping, but it looked like she was adapting well until she fell ill, leaving you with quite the burden. I've explained your situation to Assistant Professor Claire, so don't worry. Make sure you wrap up your busy work and come back. Anyway, seniors like Clevius and Yenica are pretty good at handling things, and it might make your life easier if you can secure some scholarship funds, right? If distressed, both Yenica and Anise tended to become verbose. While Yenica betrayed her discomfort plainly with her stammering, Anise had a chilling precision about her response. Nevertheless, their verbal outpouring was the same. As if to prove we were friends, here was another trait in common. Anise, too, belonged to Assistant Professor Claire's lab, and was one of the few peers I knew. Although I wasn't exactly thrilled to see her, I felt the need to extend a courteous greeting. That's kind of you. Did you come to buy something too? As I glanced into the paper bag, she clutched it tight in a burst of theatrics, covering it with her wavy chestnut hair like a curtain. Quote ellipsis quote. Her reaction was startling, leaving me momentarily at a loss for words. Sorry, I apologize. Quote. It was an involuntary apology. Anise listened to my apology, clutching the bag tight, and eventually shook her head in embarrassment. No, it's just a reflex. Why am I like this? It's not like I have anything to impress you with. Ah. Ha ha ha. Are you all right? I'm fine. You can look. There's nothing important inside. Quote, her hands trembling, she offered the paper bag. She tried to look composed, manifesting a carefree attitude, but the flush creeping across her face made it awkward for me as well. I wasn't that curious to see its contents. Yet, when Anise was ready to show it with such determination, it was hard to say I wasn't interested. I finally peered inside the paper bag. Why have you bought so much seaweed? Because it's cheap, and there's plenty of it. And the fruit peels, why are they in here? Are these also for sale? I picked them up from the grocery store next door. You can eat them fresh, or like watermelon rind, they are good if mixed with other foods. And this baguette, it's only the crust that remains. Oh, never mind. I stopped prying and sealed my lips shut. Anise Hylan was a top assistant in the academy, renowned for attracting all professors, temptation to recruit her into their labs. Known for her poised actions and appearance, she was more noble than nobility despite being a commoner. Yet the contents of the paper bag told a different tale of destitution, even including what appeared to be hand-foraged herbs. Further questions would have seemed cruel, so I refrained. Anise's family had fallen into ruin immediately after entering the academy. Scholarship work as a student assistant might cover tuition, but how she managed her living expenses was still a mystery. It turned out she was in a constant struggle to survive. The state of her diet left even my camp lifestyle looking lavish in comparison. Sylvania Academy had a distinctly aristocratic ethos. To maintain a semblance of dignity while living so frugally, one had to resort to such desperate measures. However, exposing such a pitiable state to others must be mortifying. You didn't have to show me, it wouldn't have mattered, although I suppose that's meaningless to say now. Why should I care? Is poverty a crime? What's so bad about showing you my miserable side? Are we even in that kind of relationship? There's no need for me to win your favor, right? Isn't it better to be honest rather than be ashamed? Huh. Quote ellipsis ellipsis quote. After exchanging these words, an uneasy silence fell between us. Anise sat with an air of dignity for a moment before her face gradually reddened, starting from the tips of her ears. Finally, fumbling with her own face, she broke down. I want to die. There was nothing I could say to comfort her. It was chaos due to staffing shortages, but from next week on, it looks like we'll finally have enough people on hand. Quote, really? Yeah. The vacancies we had were mainly in high-level positions. It took time to find replacements, especially someone like Professor Glast who had a long career and was heavily involved. Virtually no one could fill their shoes. Quote, we were sitting side by side on a bench beside the fountain in the central square of the dormitory, munching on simple snacks. Anise had quickly bought some pastries, boasting about the annual membership for Laplace Bakery she shared with Claire. She didn't need to mention that she shared it with Claire. My heart couldn't help but twinge a bit. Professor Glast's successor, Professor Crade, starts next week. Since they are replacing Professor Glast, they will naturally assume the role of guiding Assistant Professor Claire as well. Quote, then Assistant Professor Claire goes back to being the youngest again. Though she was originally the youngest too, right? Yes, exactly. And from what I hear, Professor Crade has quite a temper, so Assistant Professor Claire will probably have an even tougher time. Well, what can you do? Professor Crade, a colleague of Professor Glast. Not much is known about his personal life, but I'm aware he's considered somewhat of an eccentric, often lashing out in anger and intimidating everyone around him. Nonetheless, he's known for his solid work ethic and sense of responsibility, making him an ace at middle management. Needless to say, it's his subordinates who suffer. I offered a silent salute to Assistant Professor Claire for the burden she would take on. By the way, Ed, it's quite unusual for you. Usually making things yourself, you seem to have bought more than a few items. Well, I heard a rumor that stationery prices are about to go up, so I stocked up ahead of time. Quote, I didn't disclose the direct source of the rumor. It wouldn't benefit Lortel. Really, you're right, lately the prices of general store goods have been unusually fluctuating. I check daily, and over the last month, they've almost increased by 10%. It feels like someone is manipulating the market, but it's just a hunch. Quote, you check the prices every day. Quote ellipsis ellipsis quote, I almost cried picturing Anise memorizing the price of apples each day, struggling to save even a dime. Perhaps sensing my thoughts, Anise shivered and her face flushed with color. Ed, listen. There's really no need to tell others about my lifestyle, right? Of course, I know when to keep quiet, don't worry. Quote, it's strange to feel indebted for this. I haven't done anything wrong. Quote, while not a crime, it was certainly necessary. As I've said, the Academy in Sylviana had an odd aristocratic culture. Most students came from economically comfortable backgrounds, and living in poverty only served to make you stand out. I was no exception. I had braved the campus lifestyle with a firm will, but as a result, I didn't really mingle with my peers. If connections are a form of wealth, there's no point in making yourself too conspicuous. It might sound odd, but I think we're quite similar, Anise. Quote, quote ellipsis ellipsis quote, did I say something strange? No. Quote, Anise twitched her shoulders and cast her gaze down. The abundant hair covered her face, obscuring her expression. Actually, I thought the same when I first met you. Quote, staring at the hardware store building, Anise seemed distant. The building, all the structures around it, and the professors' offices beyond seemed monumental. She must feel like a stray dog wandering between skyscrapers, struggling to survive in a foreign land. Every day, the assistant hauling stacks of books between the buildings of the academy seemed as lost as a homeless pup. To me, this school is a forest, a jungle. Quote, anyone who falls ill and can't work as a scholarship student loses everything, tuition, dormitory fees, the lot. Anise must have grown so accustomed to navigating a treacherous path that even on sick days, she'd have dragged herself to fulfill her duties. You make me envious, Ed. Quote, me, you're so skillful and capable, able to live well on your own in the camp. Quote, I learned it all through hard knocks. And even now, there are plenty of troubles. Quote, really? Well, I suppose I discounted your efforts too easily. Sorry about that. Quote, having brushed off her garments, Anise got up from her seat and packed up the remaining pastries. Anyway, before the prices rise even further, I better buy the rest of the supplies I need. It'll cost me, but it's better than paying even more later. Thanks for the tip. Quote, sure. Quote, I'll head out now. Regardless, it's peculiar. If someone's manipulating the market on such a scale, it's likely the Elk merchant group behind it. But why would they go to such lengths, I wonder? Quote, a top assistant indeed, Anise was quick to analyze any immediate phenomena. Shouldn't the Academy and Students' Council not sit by idly in such situations? Simply staying put would allow them to monopolize the dormitory's logistics and earn a consistent profit. I can't grasp why they would entice conflict. Quote, stopping herself, Anise shook her head. Well, there must be a reason. As a proxy for the guild leader, Lord Telcahelm has a sharper wit and deeper insights than I have. Still, I am curious about their intentions. Quote, leaving those words behind, Anise waved goodbye and departed. Curious about Lord Tel's intentions, my curiosity was piqued as well. There are various ways to uncover motives. But the most reliable and precise way is already clear to me. Clentrue distillate isn't particularly good as a gift. Quote, and the best way was to ask directly. There was no need to seek him out. After wrapping up the day's tasks and returning to camp under the moonlight, with my arms full, there sat Lortel on a tree stump, rolling a bottle of liquor. It seemed that as the vacation period drew near, the workload at the merchant house had become more manageable. Duran is really something. If you're going to embezzle logistics expenses for liquor, you should buy wine, not all expensive drinks are good. Quote, but why should you care? I received this bottle. Quote, you see, it's kind of my gift as well. Quote, I dropped my gear at the workbench nearby and took a seat beside him. In essence, it's my drink. Duran assumes I don't know he embezzles the logistical funds for his private use. Poor guy, thinking I'm oblivious. Quote, why pretend not to know? Because it's easier to strike when he comes crawling back. Quote, Duran's description of Lortel as a cold-hearted man made sense now. It was a chain left loose to strangle Duran should he harbor any other intentions. Going public with his crime was an option Lortel had saved for when the time came. Do you drink much? No, I don't drink. Quote, oh, what a pity. Quote, the moonlight illuminated Lortel, perched on the tree stump, as he lightly smiled and set down the bottle of distillate on a rock. It's a bad habit of mine. Anyone I want to trust, I must first bind with shackles, like this distillate. Quote, it might not necessarily be a bad habit. Quote, flattering me like that, I'm quite pleased. Quote, Lortel's grin conveyed a hint of loneliness. It wasn't a new observation, but still. There's no one but Senior Ed who doesn't dance to my tune. Quote, quote ellipsis ellipsis quote, calling it special treatment feels a bit pretentious. To be frank, if I tried to manipulate you, Senior Ed would probably turn the tables on me first. Considering our mutual understanding, that's likely why we can stand on equal ground. Quote, the moonlight streamed through the distillate, casting an ephemeral glow on the stone. It's not too bad. Quote, and so, we sat in silence, gazing at the moon. After some time passed, Lortel broke the reflective mood, striking at the heart of the matter. You seem to have a question for me. I'm quick to notice, aren't I? Lortel's foxy grin was as enticing as ever. If you want to have more videos like this, then like and subscribe to my channel and have a nice day or evening or night. I will see you soon.